Hey, this is Clark with Pass the Baton, where we believe ministry is a relay, not a marathon. And to thought today, I hear so many people talk about how we need to speak up, we need to talk about things, or we need to just, whether it's our soapbox, whatever it is, we just need to speak up and stand up for it. And I believe there's a time for that. But very rarely do I ever hear people talking about or teaching when we need to shut up or when we need to keep things to ourselves. When is that appropriate? Now, Ecclesiastes literally even talks about a time to speak up and a time to be silent, when it talks about a time for several things. And of course, this is a book of poetry, so to speak, a book of wisdom when you think about Ecclesiastes. Several other times you see about it. And I remember hearing a preacher often quote 1 Thessalonians, I think it's chapter 4, when it says, study to be quiet. And I know there's a time for that. And I know there's a context where we're looking at that in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. So many people often have said, and I actually even did a video on this, it says, if you think it, you might as well say it. I disagree with that. and you could see that video on that to understand a little more where I'm coming from on that. But what made me think about this and literally study it a little bit more through the last week is just when someone, let's say they don't know you very well, and this has happened recently, but they don't even know you very well, and they just come up and they start pointing out things that you're doing that's wrong, or maybe it's even a statement of like, you just need to grow up, or you need to be more responsible, or you need to do this. Maybe it's even a habit like smoking. You need to quit that. Well, I can take things like that, especially from a friend or from a family member, which, let me just say this was not aimed at me. I just heard a conversation between a couple people, and one of these people I've been, in a sense, I feel like I've been trying to reach or trying to reach out to. And if you see another Christian and they come up, they don't even know this person very well, and they start pointing things out to them, they're not going to handle that very well. Listen, I'm not going to handle it very well. If it's someone I don't know, then it's going to be really hard for me to take advice from them. And I have taught over and over and over again, if you're going to witness to someone, if you're going to win someone, you need to be friends with them first. And that's the number one thing you can do. Yes, there's a time, yes, when you're pulling someone out of the water. I get that. There's a time when it has to be right now. But if you're really going to reach out to someone, the best thing you can do is love them as God said to, as Jesus said to love your neighbor as yourself. If you do that, then they're more willing to listen to you. They're more willing to take your... And a statement that I have used, that I heard Craig Groeschel use this statement one time, and I have used it so many times since then. And I love this statement, and it's this: everything that is said should be true, but everything that is true does not have to be said. There's a time for it. And yes, I'm all about the truth. I'm all about pointing people to the truth. But if I'm walking up to someone who doesn't know me very well, they're not looking for my advice, and I just start pointing out things. I mean, let's just take it simple. It doesn't even have to be spiritual, but look down and say, you could look down and talk about their shoes. Now listen, I'm still learning this, by the way. There are so many times that I still put my foot in my mouth, whether it's to comment on something somebody's wearing or on. There's so many times that I'm still learning this. But if you're just going to comment on how someone looks, yeah, speak the truth, but you don't have to tell them. You don't have to tell them if you think they look bad. Just keep it to yourself. And I know that there could be some argument on how I'm saying this or what I'm saying, but honestly, spiritually, I think when you just go up to a perfect stranger and you start saying, you shouldn't be doing this, you know what? You're probably right. You may very well be right that they shouldn't be doing this, but I'm going to tell you what you're going to do. You're going to make that person so angry and so offended at you that they will not listen to what you're saying. There may be a time for it. And you may even be able to bring that up. You may be able to bring it up in a conversation, but be careful how you do it. Because I'm going to tell you, they will not listen to you. I'm the same way. It's honestly even a lot about with the vaccine that's going on now. I think there's a lot of people that are refusing to take it. And this video is not about that. But there's a lot of people refusing to take it that probably would be more willing to if it wasn't mandatory, if people wasn't telling them you have to do this. In love, but in verse number 29 is the verse I want to talk about. It says, "Let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good to the use of edifying, that it may minister grace unto the hearers." So let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth. Now the word corrupt here, it's basically comes from a word that you can look at this almost as a fruit. It's corrupt, it's rotten, and some translations literally say that don't let any rotten things come out of your mouth. And when you think about that, when you think of it as a way of fruit, or a way of something that is, you're not going to eat something that's rotten. It may make you sick. It might literally, it has a bad smell to it if it's rotten a lot of times. I mean, all you have to do with a rotten piece of fruit is just, sometimes you don't even have to get close to it. And it's the same way with rotten communication. People don't even want to be around you. And it can make you sick, yeah. There's so many things that goes into it. It says don't do those things. Don't let. So he gives you a negative command first. Don't let rotten or corrupt communication come out of your mouth, but that which is good to the use of edifying. So now it's a positive command. So don't speak bad things, corrupt things, but speak good things. And things that edify, something that will build up. So he's literally saying, don't do this, but do that. To the use of edifying, to build someone up. How important is it to speak something that will build someone up? If you're talking to other Christians, you want to build them up. And honestly, if you're trying to win someone, if you're literally ministering to someone, hoping that they will give their heart and life to Jesus Christ, you want to speak things that will make them think about it, that won't just run them away, that will literally be like, oh, I get that. I'm not going into detail about how to do that here, but I'm telling you to think about your words. He says he gives you a negative command, then he gives a positive command, and he gives the motivation for it. And he says, but that which is good, the use of edifying, that it may minister grace unto the hearers. Now think about the grace that he's already talked about in the book of Ephesians. He says, our redemption, we're redeemed by the blood of Christ because of his grace. In chapter 1 chapter 2, he says we're saved by grace through faith, and that not of ourselves. It's the grace that saved us. It's often, I've heard it said often, that mercy is something we don't get that we deserve. And grace is something that we do get that we didn't deserve. And when we talk about the grace of Christ, we're getting something we didn't deserve. And here he's saying literally that it may minister grace. Sometimes our whether it's our silence or it's our speaking, we do that to minister grace. We're giving someone something that they don't deserve sometimes. And that's literally, in a sense, what he's referring to here, because in the next verse he literally says, and grieve not the Holy Spirit of God. I believe this, that literally we can go up to someone sometimes and we can say things. Maybe it is trying to point something out. Maybe it's just look at someone saying, you need to stop that. And we think we're doing the right thing because, we're supposed to go out. We're supposed to witness. We're supposed to try to get people to church. But we have to be careful about how we do that. Presentation has a lot to do with that. And literally what we're saying, if we actually know that person, has so much to do with it. And to think that literally we could grieve the Spirit because if we're saying something to someone to run them away, or that we're not saying something to someone in order to edify and build them up. C.S. Lewis said this at one point. He literally said that we have never met a mere mortal. Everyone will spend eternity somewhere. Think about that in regards to our words and grieving the Holy Spirit by what we say or don't say, and to think that every person we meet is someone who will spend eternity somewhere. So many people say, I speak my mind. People pride themselves on someone that speaks their mind. John Wesley was basically, as we know, kind of the founder of the Methodist Church, so to speak. He was such a a big voice years ago, an awesome preacher, and did so much. It's told that a lady come up to him and said, I think I know what my talent is. And he says, oh yeah, what's that? And she says, speak my mind. And he says, ma'am, I don't think God would be upset if you buried that talent. Sometimes speaking our mind is not the best thing to do. If you're asked about it, if I go to a doctor, I want them to be honest with me. They need to be honest with me up to an extent. And so many people will say that. And I give you, for instance, you could go in and talking about your problem, and they could be honest about what's going on to an extent. Because so many, for instance, if we're talking about their diabetes, I mean, literally, so many people could probably control their diabetes if they controlled their diet. And a lot of people want them to be honest about, how to help this, but they don't really want all the truth. I heard a lady say one time, literally, she was helping train me in ORs. This was years ago, and one of the docs, she had been to the doctor about her knee. And literally, we were working with that doctor. It was her and I were in the room, and the doctor come in, and she said, I just want to say I appreciate you not telling me that I needed to lose weight. She had been to him about her knee, and he just stopped and he said, well, I assumed you knew that. Now, it's not meant to be funny, but it was the truth. He didn't think he needed to tell her that. It was true, and she was actually, she appreciated that he didn't say it, but he's like, well, I didn't think I needed to. And I think there's so many things like that. Whether it's someone, I believe the Bible teaches that you should be married, and you should cleave to that wife as a husband, and that's the one you should have for the rest of your life. I also know there's things that happen that may dissolve that. So when I know someone who's maybe they're on a second marriage, I don't feel like I have to go to them and start telling them about what they done was wrong, 10 years ago. Maybe it was true. Maybe they had good reasons for it, but I don't have to tell them everything. Everything that's said should be true, but everything that's true does not have to be said. And I think we need to do so much better at guarding our words, at understanding everything that we say, everything we think doesn't have to be said. It's not about speaking your mind. Sometimes it's about understanding that we don't need to use corrupt communication, but what we say needs to be said to build up, because it's ministering grace to them, and we don't want to grieve the Spirit by doing that. I think what we say is so important. Our words have so much behind them. Our words are doing so much to either help or hurt someone. And sometimes I think we need to do better at what the Apostle Paul said, to study to be quiet, to study to not put more into it than we need to sometimes. And I think this is something I'm still learning, and I hope that if you've listened to this, maybe it'll make you think a little bit about how you approach someone, how you talk to someone, and the words that we say, and how important they really are. Until next time.